Hey everyone, Clio here, and today we're looking at stats, and I love looking at stats. In my work I love doing Excel spreadsheets, and so this isn't my greatest Excel spreadsheet ever because I don't have a whole lot of data going into it, but I'm still happy to work with the statistics and try and figure out, the best graphs and stuff like that. So let's just go over what I have for my 2020 stats. So in 2020, the first statistic to share, I guess, is that I put my Goodreads goal at 52 books for this year. I'm doing the same for 2021. It is a goal that felt like a little bit of a reach in 2019, but in 2020, I just blew it out of the park. I reached that goal already in the month of July, and so I more than doubled it. So I went to 121 books in the course of the entire year. So it's definitely a whole lot. I'm definitely very happy with having succeeded in achieving that goal and with getting further than that goal. So if you see me light it from a weird way, it's because my laptop is there. But so I'm definitely very happy that I was able to get to that goal and to get to that number. But I will say that I'm not going to try to get higher than that, or I'm not even going to try to repeat that number because it was a little bit too much of a reach. And I usually also love watching movies, I love watching series, and while I don't necessarily do a whole lot of that throughout the year, in 2020 I barely watched any sort of series, barely watched any sort of TV shows, and it got movies, that's the other word, and it got to the point where I kind of felt guilty whenever I was watching one of those about the time that I was taking away from reading and about the books on my TBR that I wasn't getting to. So because of that, in 2021 I have reset my goal to 52 again, and that is like I don't need to double it, or I don't need to get to the 100 or anything like that. And I also have set my TBRs to like a maximum of 5 or something like that, because I don't want to have that feeling again of like I said that I was going to read all of these and I'm not going to get around to them and feel guilty about that. It's fine that if I read less in 2020, because it's fine if I read less in 2021, because 2020 was a bit too much reading for my personal, balance between all of the aspects of my life, all of my interests. But so I am also going to open the Excel because I have the statistics chart here, but I also want to look at the Excel a little bit. But so in terms of the overall reading year statistics, the month in which I read the most books is the month of May. In that month I read 14 books for the entirety of that month. In terms of pages, I also should have that somewhere over here. In terms of pages, the highest amount of pages that I read was then also the month of May, and it was higher by a lot. It's more than 1,000 pages more than I read in the second most successful month, which is the month of April. So the month of May, it's an exceptional one. I was at the peak of my reading year. I was at the peak of getting so many reads and things like that, and definitely in terms of my progress through my physical TBR, the first half of the year is a lot more successful than the second half of the year was. And so that is also reflected in terms of the amount of the lowest amount of books that I read. So the months with the lowest amount of books read are the months of October, November and December, so the final 3 months of the year, in which I read 7 books each month, which is still a high number in my 2019 statistics. But so in this year it was definitely quite lower than some of the higher ones. And in those months I did still get around to 2,500 pages or even 3,500 in the month of November. So in the month of November, even though there were 7, it includes things like Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, which are extremely long books. But so yeah, in terms of pages, the least successful month is actually the first month of the year, which is interesting because the first month of the year has the second highest amount of books. So in that month I read all of the shortest books on my TBR. So I read 13 books, but they were all under 200 pages. So in total I only read just over 2,000 pages within that month. So the amount of books doesn't always tell a story, and so that is also part of my reason for wanting to reduce the number of books that I read, because this year's statistics when it comes to the average length of the books that you're reading is a lot lower than it is in other years. So in other years it's either above 400 or it's very close to the 400 spots, so it's very close to reaching an average length of 400. This year it's very low in the 300s. And so yeah, while I don't necessarily mind the fact that I read more shorter books this year, because it's actually, I'm more of a big book reader, and so a lot of times the shorter reads on my shelves actually stay behind. So I was happy that I got around to a whole lot of them, and I definitely learned to appreciate shorter novels and learned to really love that, especially like mainly in general fiction. I really love a short general fiction book, but in total I do want to be able to get to those big tomes on my shelves a lot more, because that is what I naturally gravitate towards in other years. So that's also part of the reason why I want to reduce that amount of books over time. But so in terms of the age demographic, it is definitely clear that I read, the vast majority of the books that I read is adults. So out of the 121 books that I read this year, 96 of them were adults. The rest is split even between children and YA. That's because like I read the entirety of a series of unfortunate events, so that's 13 books already in a children's genre, and then I read a few YAs, so I always read some YA, and I probably will still. I don't think I'm going to try too much YA fantasy anymore, because I've clearly grown out of the genre. It really doesn't really satisfy my needs anymore, but YA contemporary I've definitely had great experiences with in 2020, so I do still want to try and pick some of those up, the ones that I hear most people talk about throughout the year. But so, moving on to some other statistics. Ow. So looking at genre classifications, we will see that the main genres that I read are fantasy, so 26 titles in the fantasy category and 24 titles in the contemporary category. So that is great in terms of my goal of wanting to read mainly fantasy. However, in terms of the overall year that I've had, these 26 titles only represent 1/5 of my reading year. And so if you've seen my reading goals for 2021 video, which I will link, then you know that I want to get to like 50%. So I want to read so much more fantasy than this amount of fantasy represents. And so yeah, I definitely want to get that number up higher. Then we have contemporary as my secondary genre. This year I made all of like, I didn't put a literary fiction category, so a lot of literary fiction that I read will be in the contemporary category at this point in time. Some might be in historical fiction, or depending on what genre best suits it, but the majority of the literary fiction that I've read is in the contemporary category, but there are also some other things in there. As I said, I read quite a lot of YA contemporary this year. Those are also in that category. And surprisingly enough, I have mystery as my next category, which if you follow any of my recent videos, you know that I constantly refer to the fact that I don't like mystery, but that's because I ranked a series of unfortunate events as mystery because I didn't really know what genre to put on it. So that is like 13 out of the 14 mysteries that are in this. 13 out of the 14 mysteries that are in this list are a series of unfortunate events. And then sci-fi is the next genre, which I'm like, it's 11 sci-fis? Ah yeah, of course, saga. Because I was thinking that I hadn't read, that I'd probably only read like one sci-fi this year. But of course the entirety of saga also fits for sci-fi. So I read a lot more sci-fi than I thought I had. And then we get to historical and then to classics. And then I guess we're getting to quite low numbers, so I won't be mentioning those. But so classics, 9 classics over the year, I'm still quite happy with that. You know, I like reading classics. It's never a full priority of mine, and I always, you know, I don't read one every single month, for example. So I'm quite happy with having gotten to 9 over the totality of the year. And I would like to see that number stay there, even though I'm going to be reducing the entirety, like, and the total amount of books that I'm going to be reading. I would still like to get to around like 9 in a year. That would be nice if I get to that in 2021. In terms of its publication year, you will see that they are ranked here based off of the years that I read the most of. So the most books that I read were published in the years 2010 to 2018. So I have more of a focus towards reading backlisted books, but you will see that I actually did quite well in that respect this year, because second and the third category are 2019 releases and are 2020 releases. So considering the fact that I'm keeping these as separate years and all of the rest are like gathered in a bigger group of years, that is very well done. So 24 books out of 2019 and 23 books published in 2020. That means about 50 of the 121 books that I read were like this recent releases or from the previous year. So I'm pretty happy with that. I read a lot more recent stuff in this year than I tended to do. I think it's an evolution that started when I joined BookTube. Before that I was definitely more of a backlist reader, but so I'm moving more towards recent releases. I don't think I'll ever fully get there, but I like the fact that I'm at least sampling some of the recent releases. And then we get 2009 is then the next category. 20th century, still a decent amount, and then we get to like a lot lower numbers. So these are of course those classics that I've referred to. In terms of the ratio male-female or a mix of the both, it is quite 50-50. I have read about 48% from female authors, about 43% from male authors, and then the remaining 9% is a mix. That's basically Saga, which is co-authored by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. There might be an anthology in there as well. There are 2 anthologies in there as well, I think. So those will also be considered in the mix category. But so I don't actually bother checking this throughout the years. I don't actively seek out to read more by females or more by men when I see the statistic going one way or the other, and it always kind of evens itself out. So I keep the statistic in there just so that I'll have a sort of like warning if one year I go way in the direction of one, but so it always kind of evens out. And then we have the sort of like division amongst how I acquired these books, how I read these books. And so the vast majority, 88 of the 121 that I read, are owned books, which definitely at this point in time I want to keep that way because I want to reduce the amount of physical books on my shelves. And so 88 sounds great because I had 147 books on my shelves, unread books on my shelves at the start of 2020. However, those 88 are not all books that were on that list at the beginning. A lot of them I acquired throughout the year, and whereas my goal was to read all of those that I acquired in 2020, that didn't end up happening. But so yeah, I definitely want that statistic to heavily favor physical reads at this point in time, because also in 2021 I want to reduce that list that is now at 85. I want to reduce those 85 unread books on my shelves to an even further number. And then the next biggest category is script. So yeah, I do have a script subscription, and I'm kind of sad that I only got to 11 in a year. I also feel like I read more on script than I did here. Maybe that borrowed book that I have somewhere down there, which I'm not entirely sure what it means. Borrow. Let me look into this data itself. Which is the book that I borrowed? A Tolkien one. The Hobbit. Yeah, okay, I understand why I did that, because The Hobbit, I basically listened to Andy Serkis read out The Hobbit for charity, and so I didn't really know what to put that category in, because now I physically own it, but at that point in time I didn't physically own it, nor did I use Script, my Kindle, the NetGalley, or a library, so I put it as borrow. So yeah, that's that one book. But so 11 books on Script for the year is a little bit low, because it is a subscription service, and I would have at least liked to have seen me get one each month in. So I do definitely want to read more of that, I guess, in 2021. On the other hand, I still want to read more of my physical reads, but I do actually think that I want to try and prioritize some of those short audiobooks. For example, there are a lot of audiobooks that I kind of saved that are just like 3 or 4 hours long that I could easily fit into a reading month without feeling guilty about taking away reading time from my physical shelves. Kindle is kind of surprising to me that I have 10 Kindle titles on there. I know that of course I read a few books through Kindle that were like on the short list or the long list for the Booker Prize, because I didn't have access to them yet. And then I also participated in the BookTube Awards, and I didn't buy all of those neither. So some of them I got from my library, but some of them I also got through Kindle. So that's probably what's causing that. And then 6 NetGalley arcs. So I joined NetGalley somewhere in the year, and I already read 6 arcs. I'm quite surprised because my feedback ratio isn't that great, and I actually need to read a book before the 12th of January as well that I was hoping to get around to in December. But so yeah, still happy with that. I didn't join NetGalley early on in the year, so this is just like, I don't know, from July onwards maybe. And then from the library I got 5 books, which yeah, I want to see that number go up eventually, but maybe not yet in 2021, as I want to read those books first. But so yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that one. And then the final statistic that I have for you guys is the spread of my rating. I will have my average rating up here, but Goodreads is like not responding at the moment, but I think it's like somewhere in the mid 3 or star rating, or like maybe even towards the lower half of the 3-star rating. Though my main, like the biggest categories that I've used is the 5-star rating and the 4-star rating. So definitely the 4-star rating is the majority. So 4-star rating is like a fourth of all books that I've read, I've given a 4-star rating. And then about, you know, 1/6, little over 1/6 of the books that I've read, I've given a 5-star rating. So I've given quite a lot 5-star ratings this year, 24, which, you know, some of them probably won't hold up at this point in time, as in my 5-star rating should reflect, you know, my favorite reads of the year. Some 4 stars are higher in my opinion than some 5 stars, for example. So 5-star, you know, maybe I should switch over to sort of like the co-pile system. I'm definitely going to be checking that out, but I don't know whether I want to switch over or not. I like the sort of impulsive rating system as well, but so yeah, 24 is a little bit on the high side. On the other hand, I could also just be happy about the fact that I read so many books that I gave 5 stars this year. And so yeah, I'll just show you the division of there, but I don't have too much to say about that anymore. So I have 3 books that I didn't rate. That means that I couldn't really decide on my reading experience, that I was kind of unsure about what my reading experience had been with that book, and so I didn't feel like putting a rating on it. I have 3 books that I gave a 1-star rating to, so that's fine. Out of 120 books, only having 3 that are 1 star, only having 9 that are 2 stars, 6 2.5 star. So there are not that many books that get under a 3-star rating, and a 3-star rating for me is, you know, solid or meh. It was a book that I enjoyed, that I had something out of, but it didn't really surpass that level. It wasn't a great read, it wasn't an amazing read, but 3 stars is definitely a solid rating for me. So when I say that my rating is closer to the lower half of the 3-star rating, I'm just wary of that rating, because that then makes me think that I have too much under the 3-star rating. But when I give a 3-star rating, I definitely think that that is an okay rating. And a lot of times when it comes to Goodreads and I need to choose between a 3 and a 4-star, then I will probably stick closer to the 3-star a lot of the time. And so these statistics give a little bit more of an exact view of my rating division, and I'll actually see what my average rating is on that spreadsheet. So on the spreadsheet in which I have the half stars and stuff and things like that, my average rating is actually 3.71. So 3.72 if we round it off. So that is great. It's close to the 4-star rating, and so it means that I had a lot of great reads in the year. So, which is also how I feel my year has been. You know, I had a lot of great reads, and not a whole lot of them were super disappointing. Some were just average, of course, but not a whole lot were really disappointing or were really bad in my experience. So these are my reading statistics for this year. Definitely let me know down below which statistics you would want to see next year. I think I am going to try and change some things around within my Excel, add some extra categories, though it might take a little bit more research, but I do like the capabilities that I have now with Power BI to make these sort of nicer graphs. And so I do think I want to include like the country to be able to use the map diagram in Power BI. So I think I'll go and be at least including that for next year. Maybe try to include such things as the sort of like representation that is in there. But then it's always like, if you start with that, where do you end, you know? Where do you draw the line, you know? How much do you keep track of? How long do you allow that spreadsheet to become? Because that also means that of course there's more work that's going to be going into filling in that spreadsheet. But as I said in the beginning, I am also a statistics nut, so in that sense, the more the better, I guess. So yeah, let me know what you would be interested in to see in like my 2021 statistics video, and I'll see how I can incorporate that into my spreadsheets. But so yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found it interesting to look at these statistics together with me, and yeah, hope to see you guys in a future one. Bye!